Good evening. Tonight, we unravel a story involving a former president, his adversaries, and a legal strategy that collapsed spectacularly. The federal cases against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James were dismissed. The reason? The special counsel, Lindsey Halligan, was unlawfully appointed. This isn't a minor error, it's the foundation of the prosecution deemed invalid. We'll explore the court's reasoning and what this means for Donald Trump's broader campaign to settle scores. This is a story you need to understand, as the aftershocks are just beginning. Let's dive into the context. Donald Trump promised retribution against his political enemies, with James Comey and Letitia James at the top of the list. These cases were meant to be the first proof of this campaign. However, their dismissal is a catastrophic failure at the first hurdle. Imagine planning a grand fireworks display, only for the first rocket to fizzle and explode on the ground. This is the scale of embarrassment for the strategy's architects. Instead of projecting strength, they showcased incompetence and a misunderstanding of the laws they sought to weaponize. This setback undermines the entire campaign's premise. If they couldn't get these prosecutions right, how can they handle more complex challenges? The dismissal damages the campaign's credibility and shatters the aura of inevitability. The first domino was supposed to trigger a cascade, but it was blown over by a judge pointing out the obvious. The goal was to make an example of Comey and James, but the example is now one of failure and overreach. The architects, including Trump, must now explain how their hand-picked prosecutor was disqualified on elementary grounds. The campaign for retribution is, for the moment, in tatters. How did this happen? How did a process designed to uphold the highest standards of justice go so far off track? The answer lies with Lindsey Halligan, the woman at the center of this legal storm. Her appointment as special counsel set off a chain reaction that would ultimately unravel the entire case. A federal judge ruled her appointment as special counsel was unlawful, a decision that sent shockwaves through the legal community and raised serious questions about oversight and accountability. The Appointments Clause of the Constitution and Department of Justice regulations were not just overlooked, they were outright ignored, undermining the very foundation of the process. Halligan was appointed by a lower-level official who simply did not have the authority to make such a consequential decision. This was not a minor technicality, but a fundamental breach of protocol. Imagine a scenario where a CEO's critical decision is rubber-stamped by an intern. That's how far removed this appointment was from proper procedure. The judge found Halligan's appointment was invalid from the very beginning, meaning every action she took was tainted by this original error. She had no legal power to bring these indictments, no matter how serious the allegations or how high-profile the case. The judge also dissected Halligan's lack of qualifications, scrutinizing her background and experience in detail. Historically, special counsels are seasoned prosecutors with years of federal litigation experience, often having handled complex and sensitive cases at the highest levels. Halligan, however, had no prosecutorial experience whatsoever. She had never tried a federal case, nor had she led any major criminal investigations. Her career was primarily in insurance law, a field far removed from the demands and complexities of federal criminal prosecution. The ruling paints a picture of a process driven by loyalty, not competence, a system where personal connections outweighed merit and experience. The administration bypassed a pool of highly qualified prosecutors to appoint a trusted insider, raising concerns about fairness and transparency. This decision to prioritize loyalty over legal propriety was the fatal flaw that doomed the entire prosecution effort from the outset. The rules for appointing a special counsel exist for a reason: to ensure independence, impartiality, and the necessary experience to handle cases of national importance. Here, those constraints were ignored, and the consequences were both immediate and far-reaching. Every action Halligan took, every indictment she filed, was without legal authority, and therefore null and void. The entire investigation was illegitimate from its inception, casting doubt on the integrity of the process and the motives behind it. The ruling rebukes not only the method, but also the motive behind these prosecutions, calling into question the judgment of those who orchestrated them. It suggests a rush to prosecute that prioritized speed and political expediency over due process and the rule of law. As a result, James Comey and Letitia James now have a massive victory, as the cases against them were thrown out on fundamental grounds. This outcome serves as a stark reminder of the importance of following the law, not just in letter, but in spirit, when the stakes are highest. The speed of these cases stands out, almost as if the clock itself was racing to keep up with the headlines. In the world of federal law, such haste is not just unusual, it's alarming. Complex federal investigations usually take months or even years to build, requiring painstaking attention to detail, careful review of evidence, and a methodical approach to ensure justice is served. But in this case, indictments seem to materialize almost overnight, as if the process was being driven by external pressures rather than the facts at hand. It appeared that the decision to prosecute was made first, with the justification and supporting evidence assembled hurriedly afterward, reversing the natural order of justice. Critics, including former Department of Justice officials and legal scholars, warned that this rush was a dangerous red flag, one that could undermine public trust in the system. The judge's ruling on Halligan's appointment validated those concerns, highlighting procedural missteps that should never have occurred in a properly handled case. The haste led to procedural sloppiness, missed deadlines, incomplete filings, and a general sense of chaos that only fueled further skepticism. Instead of seasoned legal professionals guiding the process, political operatives seemed to be calling the shots, prioritizing optics over substance. The real goal appeared to be grabbing headlines and shaping public perception, rather than building a case that could withstand the scrutiny of a fair trial. This episode is a stark reminder of the risk that political considerations can infect federal law enforcement, threatening the impartiality that is its foundation. Our system has checks and balances for a reason, to prevent exactly this kind of overreach and to protect the integrity of our institutions. When the process is abused, it risks creating a boy who cried wolf effect, where future legitimate prosecutions are met with doubt and suspicion. Every future case will now be viewed through the lens of this bungled attempt, with skepticism clouding even the most well-founded charges. The taint of political motivation is not easily washed away. It lingers, casting a shadow over the credibility of the justice system. This misstep hands ammunition to future targets of political retribution, who can now point to this case as evidence of bias and unfair treatment. They can argue, with some justification, that they are victims of a hasty, politicized process rather than a fair and impartial system. The rush to prosecute was not just a tactical error, it was a profound miscalculation that weakened the very principles it claimed to defend. The belief that one could simply declare an enemy and have the full weight of the DOJ crash down on them has been proven false, and the consequences are far-reaching. The system ultimately held, but the attempt has left lasting damage, weakening the norms and protections that safeguard us all, and reminding us how fragile the rule of law can be when politics takes precedence over principle. This level of presidential involvement in DOJ decisions is unprecedented. The norm is to maintain a separation between the White House and DOJ. Trump saw the DOJ as an instrument of his will. The cases against Comey and James were not just DOJ cases, they were Trump's demands. A respected prosecutor was forced out for being insufficiently aggressive. He was replaced by someone who facilitated Halligan's appointment. This is a textbook example of politicizing an investigation. The president shaped the DOJ to achieve a personal, political outcome. His fingerprints are all over the process. This involvement is dangerous to the rule of law. Citizens should be investigated based on evidence, not political whims. The judge's ruling cannot be divorced from this context. The decision to install a loyalist makes sense under immense political pressure. This affair exposes the fragility of norms governing the White House-DOJ relationship. The dismissal is a setback for presidential control, but the model remains. The belief that the DOJ is the president's personal law firm hasn't changed. This attempt failed, but it reveals an intent corrosive to democratic institutions. The president's involvement is the original sin from which these failures flowed. Where do we go from here? The legal and political landscape has shifted dramatically, and the consequences of this moment will ripple far beyond the courtroom. The question now is not just about what happens next, but how every player in this high-stakes game will adapt to a new reality. The dismissal is a landmark moment, sending shockwaves through legal and political circles alike. It provides a powerful legal precedent for anyone who might find themselves in the crosshairs of this administration's retribution efforts. The Halligan defense is now more than just a legal argument. It's a shield, ready to be wielded by future defendants. Prosecutors will now face immediate, well-prepared motions to dismiss, forcing them to rethink their strategies from the outset. The administration is at a crossroads. either follow the rules meticulously or risk another very public and damaging defeat. The DOJ has announced plans to appeal, but legal experts agree their odds are slim, given the strength of the ruling. The decision is deeply rooted in both the Constitution and the very regulations the DOJ is supposed to uphold, making it a formidable obstacle. Ironically, an appeal could backfire, further cementing the precedent and making it even harder for the administration to pursue similar cases in the future. This forces a complete recalibration of the retribution strategy, requiring new tactics and a more cautious approach. The initial plan of rapid-fire indictments, meant to overwhelm and intimidate, is now in serious jeopardy. Future targets will be better prepared, armed not just with legal precedent, but with a roadmap for defense. Prosecutors may have to build their cases the old-fashioned way, slowly, methodically, and with far more evidence. This new reality creates a growing tension between the demands of legal prudence and the pressures of political expediency. Judges, emboldened by this precedent, may now feel more confident in scrutinizing the administration's filings and holding them to the highest standards. The public narrative has shifted dramatically, with the story now focusing on the administration's missteps and overreach. Instead of a show of strength, the headlines now highlight incompetence and allegations of abuse of power. The dream of a swift, decisive legal war has collided head-on with the enduring power of constitutional law and due process. The administration has been reminded in no uncertain terms that there are rules, and those rules have real consequences. The retribution campaign is far from over, but it has suffered a major setback that will shape every move going forward. Its future is now clouded by uncertainty, shadowed by the precedent of its first major failure. The path to retribution is now longer, more complicated, and fraught with new legal obstacles. The game has changed, and everyone must play by new rules. The implosion of Trump's retribution tour's opening act is significant. The cases against Comey and James were dismissed due to an unlawful foundation. This marks an embarrassing moment for an administration focused on punishing enemies. The judge's finding on Halligan's appointment sent shockwaves through the legal world. The ruling is a reminder that the legal system still has checks and balances. The desire for revenge crashed into the rule of law, and the law held. The story isn't over, but for now, these cases are closed.